This is PROpulsion, the podcast where we dive deep into the nitty-gritty of taking your business and your practice to the next level. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a franchisee, or a financial planning pro, you are in the right place. We're talking the latest tech, best practices, and expert insights, all while keeping it real and entertaining. So grab a coffee, sit back, and let's get ready to blast off. I'm your host, Francois de Toy. David, I don't want to assume that I can say welcome to the show, David. I don't think you need any introduction because we can never make that assumption, right? But you may very well not recognize David this morning because it is not the same David that's on the photo. David is, I don't know, he lost his beard overnight. But David, warm welcome. Nice to finally have a proper chat with you as well on the show. Thank you for the segment that you run. It's really valuable. But yeah, just a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. And I think one of those things is updating profile photos, right? It's always the last thing you do. And life doesn't stay constant. We're always in a state of change. So I need to whip out the old camera and get a new profile photo. And probably keep a few iterations so I can change them as the hair grows and gets cut.
Yeah, because luckily you don't get older. You just get either you have hair or you don't have hair. So, so that's fantastic. All right, let's get into the conversation, David. For those of you that don't know David, I think most people got to know David when he was with the FBI. In fact, I ran into David at the Checkers in Krugersdorp, and I then said to him on the whim, like, David, don't you and the FBI want to do a news segment on the show? Because I was thinking about how do we change the show around, and that was season 2, right? So that's many, many years ago, and that's how it started. And FBI is still going, you're still going, albeit not with the FBI anymore. But, you've had a long standing with the show, so thank you for that. I want to get right into the conversation. If you want to learn more about David, you can follow him on LinkedIn. We've got all the details down below and all of that, so you can do that. You always talk about, that financial planners start off as technicians rather than entrepreneurs. And I see this a lot as well, where you find that a lot of financial planners and advisors, when they decide to start their own business, that they sort of think they're just going to do the job of a financial advisor. And then suddenly the things that they are used to being done for them, suddenly it's their responsibility. But I'm keen from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges that they find when they move from sort of making this transition from a financial advisor into starting their own business or running their own business?
Yeah, so Francois, there are really two pieces of work that I read that really shaped my idea around this. The first one being the E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber. And he really looked at a viewpoint of why many small businesses fail. And he called it the E-Myth, which actually stands for the entrepreneurial myth. And it's in that he said that most businesses are not started by entrepreneurs who are risking capital for the reward, but started by the technicians. So essentially, you're doing a job, you're doing it somewhere, and you think, hey, I can do this better, or I can do something different, or I want something different from where I'm doing my job, but I want to carry on doing what I'm doing. Then you leave your job and you start your own business, and that's when the reality hits. And in the beginning, it might all be the honeymoon period where you can carry on doing what you're doing, but then the reality of running a business hits. And it might be something where it's your first tax return that you have to submit for the business, and then realizing that you haven't actually kept a set of books, or it's that compliance report you need to submit your financial statements through to the FSCA, and you realize, well, no, I haven't actually kept financial records, and I need to now go and update those, which essentially means it takes you away from doing what you love, which is sitting in front of clients and dealing with clients, and needing to get into the background and do the business things, which might not be your passion. That often leads to people getting very disillusioned with what they're doing. And more, you see that you're spending time away from your core purpose, which is seeing your clients, to running the business, which leads to a decline in the business. Because if you're not generating the revenue, if you're not seeing the clients, the business is stagnating and are not growing. The second piece I read it was an article that said financial planners make the worst CEOs. And I was very offended by the title of that article, because I thought, hey, we're financial planners, we're great at what we do, we know what we do. But as I read into it, it really highlighted the fact that by taking on the role of running the business, it detracts us from the role of seeing our clients, which is what is really, for 90% of us, our passion area. So that's really what formulated this thought, that when you come into it, there's actually two roles that need to be fulfilled in any business, and particularly the financial planning business. The one is that of running the business and keeping the lights on and everything working on that. And the other one is the client engagement side, which is actually sitting in front of clients and chatting to them about their financial futures.
Thank you very much, David. But also, you've identified three main functional areas in financial planning. Can you just maybe briefly walk us through those three main areas?
Yeah. So the way we've defined it is, well, number one, you got your operations side of the business. Now, the operations side is looking at things like your finance and accounting, your information technology, your human resources, your marketing, and your business development. And we firmly believe that while there is a requirement for financial planners themselves to do business development growth, we think that is a function of the business. The business has the obligation to generate marketing and to generate clients that the financial planners in the business can then piggyback on. The second area is what we've termed client engagement, and many refer to them as the practice or financial planning. We think it is the client engagement team. And that client engagement team is made up of the financial planners. It's made up of a para-planning function, however you implement that. And the third leg of that is the client service side of it. So client engagement team is made up of the planners and the administration. And then the third functional area is compliance. And quite often we see compliance, when it's spoken about in financial planning, it's spoken around in the terms of FICA, it's spoken on in terms of POPI and the phase legislation. The reality is, as a business owner, there are other areas of compliance that you've got to look at. Things like SARS, things like POPI for a business, the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So all those things that relate to the operational side. And then this is all wrapped up in the governing body side of things. So it's not just a case of saying, let's do things in the business. There is a responsibility to look at what the future of the business looks like, what the strategic direction of the business is, and where we're ultimately going to end up as a business. What are you trying to create? And that's the role of the governing body. Now, quite often when you start out a small business, you're doing everything. Okay, you're chief cook and bottle washer. But by making sure that you identify these functional areas, you can then start building what your organization could look at based on your vision and where you want to take it.
Because that's an important part, right? I mean, these are three functional areas, which, like everything else, can sort of be sorted into them. And then also, they don't work independently from each other, right?
Yeah, no, they definitely don't. They're all integrated into each other. And you can't say, well, I'm going to have an operations team that's just going to sit and do their own thing and not worry about it. Because remember, the operations team also looks at things like business optimization and processes. So they could essentially not only look at business processes, but they could come on and give an independent view on your financial planning processes and what they look like and how to optimize them. The use of technology, for instance, and I think you've had some great guests talking about AI and technology and saying, technology is not a technology problem, it's a business problem. So you first got to look and see what do you need to solve from a business viewpoint, and then look at bringing in technology. So you can't have a financial planning team that is going in one direction and your ops team having a total different view on technology and what needs to be done. So they are definitely, although they are functional areas, they are all integrated and they can't operate independently. And you're just going to have a bunch of people doing their own things. And that's where having the vision for the business is quite important, and setting that direction of what your business is going and detailing that into a functional strategy of where the business is going to end up.
Yeah. So there's so many roles within a business,
Yeah.
David. Like, I mean, there's, I think, 26 roles or something that you've outlined in a business. Which ones do new financial planning business owners tend to struggle with the most out of those? I mean, 26, that's a lot of hats, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of hats to wear. And I think the reality is that the two areas that probably struggle the most is the operations side and the strategic side. And the reason being is that most people, and again, we're generalizing here, and this is from research and generalization, but most people who start a business are first and foremost financial planners. And there's also a reality is that when you start a business, your first goal is revenue generation. Okay, it's all very good and well to talk about having processes and sitting down and having a functional design and having a great business plan, but it doesn't help if the money's not coming in. So you can't really sit down and say, for the next 6 months, I'm just going to think about the business and not see clients. So generally speaking, when you start your business, the first thing that you got to jump into is the revenue generation and bringing the clients on board and making sure there are funds available to keep the business sustainable. So things like the accounting side, the human resources side, those all fall by the wayside, and they then start becoming problems to be dealt with, as opposed to something nice to deal with in the start point. So that's where the big struggle comes in, and that's where quite often people sit back and think, what have I done to myself? Because now I've got to deal with all of this. You start growing and you start bringing people on board, and what a lot of the challenges of hiring new people is not actually knowing what you're hiring people for. So quite often, from a business viewpoint, we hire a person and then try fit them into a role. The reality is we should do it the other way around. We should have roles defined, know exactly what we're looking for, and then try and find the right people to fulfill those roles.
So the big question is obviously, when and how do I know? What are there some signs? Like the other day I was driving back from Stellenbosch to Somerset West, and I thought to myself, so when did the speed limit change? Because I got a little photo. Like what are the signposts like along the way that we sometimes miss and that we maybe need to look out for, David, that is screaming like, okay, so maybe you need to get outside help. And with outside help, I guess we can also define it as employing somebody or getting somebody literally outside your business to help you. But are there some clear signs that I need to sit up and take notice of?
Yeah, I think the first sign is exactly that. If you ask me yourself, what the hell am I doing? That's probably the first sign that something is going wrong, and you need to look at what you're actually doing, what you want to do, and how can you achieve what you want. The second sign is the exhaustion. Okay, and when you're finding that you're spending 20-hour days and not getting ahead, that's a sign that something is going wrong. It means that there's a distraction that is preventing you from reaching your goals, from reaching your vision. And that's the time to sit back and go, where have I actually gone wrong with it? And I firmly believe that if you can, and remember, we as financial planners never go to clients and say, look, and in the first meeting or the first discussion we have with them, that let's just put a life policy in place and then figure out why we put the life policy in the place in the second bit. We always say, let's define a financial plan. Let's get the plan right and then look at solutions for the plan. So if you don't have a plan, if you don't have an idea where you're going, if you're thinking, look, I'm just can carry on seeing clients and hopefully things will come right and eventually I'll get to the place where I want to be, even though I don't know where that is, that's probably a sign to say, take a step back, get out of your business for a day, for a week, for 2 hours, and say, where am I actually going and what do I actually want to achieve from this?
I think it's sometimes very difficult, David. Like I was looking at a few things this past while, and I think there's often some difficulty in like, where do I start kind of thing, which I think is something really that a lot of people struggle with. And I think there's one particular thing that it probably boils down to. But that's a hard part. So, I mean,
Yeah.
do you have any views just maybe on how do I get started if I know I need to do this? Or there's all these signs and I recognize them and I go, okay, yeah. So now I need to take some time out, be it an hour, 2 hours a week, whatever it may be. Um, but where do I then start? Like, well, what's that first step then once I do take the time out?
So I think the first thing is, and it's probably the title of this, which is don't go it alone. Okay. There is always somebody who you can talk to. Okay. Whether that be your spouse, whether that be peers who are going through the same thing as you. So you've got a great community in something like PROpulsion. So it might even be a thing of going into the community and sharing and being brave enough to go, hey, I've hit this roadblock. And what you will find is that there will be a lot of other people who may not have or who may have been at the same place as you and found a solution. So reaching out to your peers, reaching out to your support base is the first place to start. And then I think I'd be remiss in doing myself a disservice if I didn't say that one of the options is also hiring a business consultant or a business coach. So if you don't know where to start, if you don't know where to go, even if you say, let me take an hour, let me take 2 hours of time of someone and just run their ideas by me and get a different perspective. I cannot emphasize the value of having an external perspective of somebody else just coming in and going, hey, have you not thought about this? I mean, quite often my sounding board is my wife, okay, because we've been together now and we've got a 30-year-long relationship. So we know each other very well. So if I'm going through something, I'm happy to talk to her. But then I've also got a business partner who's also a coach. And quite often I run things that are not business related through him. And he's very happy to give me some advice and guidance in that. So I think the first point is realize that you're not alone and look at what your support structure looks like and where the best place is for you to maybe get an external perspective or to get some external advice. And if that's the case of saying, I want to hire someone, even if it's just as a thinking partner, where I have an hour or two with them on a monthly basis, it's saying, let's have a chat with them. So don't go it alone.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's probably the thing that one of the things that makes a big difference in my life as well. And there's something magical that happens. You know, I always say when you write things down, because there's something that flows from your brain to the page, but there's also something magical in, like you said, soundboarding with someone, because you hearing yourself speak about it, like, and it comes out, you know, it's not staying in your head. You're actually saying it out loud. There's something that happens there as well. And sometimes as you're talking, you go like, yeah, okay. Then there's also, I mean, obviously one of the things, and there's a show that we run in the UK called Operations Optimizer, which is quite a fantastic little show. But one of the things that you could really do is to get an operations manager. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what an operations manager is, and maybe just, you know, what are some key responsibilities that they would have in a business?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, think of all the stuff that you do on a daily basis and you go, I don't really want to do this. That's really the role of the operations manager. So this is where the idea of the functional areas come through. So the operational manager's job is to do the business side of financial planning. So it's to handle things like, are you on a regular basis keeping accurate accounting records? Are you monitoring those accounting records? Have you developed KPIs? Have you thought about, what is a good indicator about the financial health of the business? It's to deal with the human resources side of things. And the human side is what we love of our financial planning, but not necessarily of running a business. So there's a lot of minefields and traps that can come into that. So it's a case of saying, how do you make sure that the human resources, the performance management, the hiring, the firing, the keeping staff happy, creating the culture, that's the operations management side. Looking at your IT policy. Okay, so what does it come in not only from what does our tech stack look like and what are we using, but what is our security around that? What is our support around that? And then also developing marketing and business development plans and proposals. Now, to be very clear, it's not a fact that an operations manager is going to be doing all of these things. And this is where those 26 roles come from. So your operations manager really takes on an oversight and a management viewpoint of those functions as opposed to a doing. Now, again, as a small business, you might find someone who is doing a lot of those things and has to come in and wear all of those hats so they can remove those roles from the financial planner. But the ideal situation is that you would hire people that report into the operational manager in each of those functional areas and do that. And that could either be a hire or outsourced function. The operations manager role is also one on the governing body. So they are also somebody who can help the founder, who can help the CEO think on a strategic level. So they can help define what the strategy of the company looks like and where it is heading and what the ultimate goal is 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah. And I mean, that was sort of my next question as well, David, that, you often find that, and again, like the reason why I asked you to, what is an operations manager? Because again, like if we don't define it correctly from day one, we might think it's an assistant, just like we say we have a paraplanner, but they're actually an assistant. They're not a paraplanner. Like we treat them like an assistant. They do a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff, which does not fall within the ambit of a paraplanner. And the same thing is going to happen here in smaller businesses, probably. And also then, if you think about all the responsibility that such a person takes, there's obviously a certain level of person with a certain level of experience, a certain level of knowledge that you would need that comes at a certain cost. And you did mention, I mean, there's obviously some other options there, but what about smaller firms that can't afford to appoint an operations manager? What options do they have, and what could be a solution for them?
Yeah, so Francois, we've had some discussions and there's a lot of thought out there. And the thought is that one solution to look like, so if you're not in a position to build a business which has the 26 roles, the one solution to look at is go, what are my core functions? And the core function is really the client engagement side. It's the financial planning side. Everything else is non-core, although important to the business. And there's a variety of options in terms of using outsourced partners. So I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that you have to immediately go and hire an operations manager. There are companies out there that do management consulting, including FI Consult. And part of that management consulting is giving you an outsourced operations management function. Now, we as a business has looked at it and said, we want to be able to help everybody regardless of where they are on their journey.
I mean, it is quite an interesting conversation so far, and thank you very much for the sort of comments. I'm going to go through the comments while David is finding his internet connection, which has probably evaded him. Terence says that there's so many things for us to do as FSP business owners. And whether you see yourself as a business or you see yourself as a practice, right? So for me, I defined it in the day of CPD as well. What is the difference between a practice and a business? And a practice is really that small business with a small team. You can often build that within somebody else's business, or you could just set up your business as a practice, basically. But a business obviously then have more people, bigger teams, multiple financial advisors and so forth, usually. So I think that's how we define that. But many people do see their practice as their business, which is important. And there's so many aspects that we need to manage around that. And I don't think we're always content with just how much that takes us away from the core things, as David has rightly alluded to before. So definitely. Jark says, Terence, rephrase things to do as hats to wear rather than then you can build a nice collection. Yes, absolutely. And it's amazing. Like there's this book by Daniel Strauss, The Billionaire Mindset. So even if you've got no aspirations to become a billionaire, that's not what it's about. But if you look at the way and the level at which we need to think to really take our businesses forward, and how you can actually change the level at which you think based on what you are busy with at that particular point in time, it's really powerful what you can do from that perspective. So basically coming back to wearing different hats. And it's literally, if you put yourself in that role and in that position, it's crazy how differently you think then. Whether you think as a CEO or whether you think as a founder, you think as a shareholder, you think as a director, you think as an investor even into your business. Like, what are the things that you would want to see? You would want to see very different things from when you're doing the job of a financial advisor or planner. So those things are really, really important. Carol also shared that when having my Blue Star practice, I was everything detracting from my ultimate vision and purpose. I was a glorified recruitment agent of advisors to generate income, rather partner with the right people. Absolutely. I think we all go through that one when we start. Like, you think you're going to do this thing, and then the other thing takes a lot of your time. Neil also commented to say that when we were talking about the signposts, he said a big sign is if or when you stop having fun doing what you do. I think when you ask yourself that question, it's very interesting, because last week I spoke about, are we at a crossroads? And I had such a response back via email, WhatsApp, and phone calls. People are saying, like, you know what, I find myself at that point. And it's always, what is that crossroad? It's like, is this what I signed up for? Is this what I still wanted to do? So those things are really, really important, and clear signs. And it's often not a case of this isn't fun anymore. It's just that we haven't surrounded us with the right people, and we haven't gotten the right people in. So very important. Liana also said, I realize every day that I've been very lucky to have been a business owner before becoming a financial planner. Absolutely. It's a different mindset when you go into it. So thank you very much for that. Mr. Johan Oosthuizen said, start with understanding your entrepreneurial mindset. Definitely. Also know it comes down to knowing what you really enjoy. And I think the other thing that's important is, like, do you understand and know what gives you energy in business and what drains your energy? Because the things that drain your energy are the things where you should find somebody who gets energy from that. So very important. We need to be really intentional when we look for people. Terence says, I've outsourced this function in my FSP recently. It has been amazing, and the experience both empowering and freeing. And I know for a fact that Terence is using David for that. So kudos to David. Then, David, I mean, there's one particular question I wanted to ask you. Sorry, I know we're out of time and the internet didn't work with us. But there is one question that I wanted to ask you. So just by the way, Terence mentioned that he's using, and I said, like, I know he's using you, and fantastic, and he's very happy and getting a lot of value from outsourcing that specific function. But for those advisors and planners who are really feeling that overwhelm and that sort of, they're sort of all over the place, I mean, what would be one piece of advice that you would want to leave us with today?
So the one piece of advice is just have a conversation with someone. So if you don't know where you are, like we do for our clients, and we help them get clarity, have a conversation with somebody to get clarity on it. And in fact, what I'm prepared to do, Francois, for anyone who's on the call today, if you want a free 30-minute consultation or 30-minute chat just to get that clarity and to get some advice, I'm happy for you to reach out to me, and I can give a complimentary 30-minute discussion just to help you get that clarity and put you on the right path.
It's fantastic. Thank you very much, David. And with that, ladies and gents, we've come to the end of the show. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. And until then, stay safe, be blessed and prosper, and continue to raise the bar. Love you. All right, folks, that's a wrap for this episode of Propulsion. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. Remember to tune in every Friday at 8 a.m. South African time for our live show called Propulsion Live. You can find it at www.propulsion.co.za/live. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, hit that subscribe button or the follow button and share it with your friends, colleagues, and anyone else you think would get something out of it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.